So, hi Nasir sir. First of all, belated happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Shashi. Thanks very much.
So, many actors right now in lockdown are trying to be in touch with their craft, and we would like to look for inspiration from you by knowing how you are in touch with your craft. If you could tell us.
You know, if an actor doesn't stay in practice, he begins to rust. It's like an object made of metal, and one has to guard against the rust. Rust can occur due to many reasons. It could occur due to age. It could occur due to failure. It could occur due to disappointments. It could also occur due to lack of being in touch with your work.
Yes.
And so I've made it a point. See, if I, in fact, in this 5 months had been completely unable to perform, it would have been very hard for me and for my wife. We're all performers, and my daughter as well, and my sons. Luckily, uh, this challenge, I say luckily in an ironical sense, that this challenge that we are all facing has
Yeah.
pushed us all into a corner where we're going to have to exert our creativity. There's some
True.
wonderful short movies being made by some young people about the lockdown.
Yeah.
Since they are working under restrictions, they're
True.
really exerting themselves and coming up with very novel and interesting subjects.
True.
So
True.
that is one aspect of it, and I've worked in a few of these movies. I personally have been keeping in touch by rehearsing on Zoom. Uh, three plays, in fact, one of which is Waiting for Godot, which we wanted to revive this year but couldn't.
Yeah.
So we did a reading of it on YouTube, on Vimeo, and the other two are plays which I'm planning. One is a Bernard Shaw play called Gunwan in Hell, and the other is a play based on Faiz Ahmed Faiz's imprisonment and the term of trial of him and his wife. So it's based on the letters they wrote to each other. So I've been rehearsing with the actors on this. I've also been recording stories, poems, motivational messages, whatever. It's been a blessing in disguise because I think a lot of us will finally have found the cure for boredom. You know? Yeah. When life is
Yeah.
normal, and you have say 2 hours stretching ahead of you, then you wonder what to do. Yaar, 2 ghante kya karunga? You know, here when there's a whole day stretching ahead of you, you really have to plan your day. For the first time in my life, I'm living according to my schedules.
So,
So I've been keeping in touch. And,
do
and,
you?
and what I would, sorry to interrupt you, but since you talked about younger actors
Yeah. Yeah.
gaining something from my experience, I would advise whoever young actor is listening to continue working on yourself. Nobody can prevent you from doing that. You don't need anybody's help to do that. You can do it on your own because nobody cares about your development except you yourself. And
Very
if
true.
you don't take advantage of this, it's going to be an opportunity lost. So all you need to do a performance, these days you also have your telephones, you can photograph yourself as well. All you need to do a performance is one text and one listener. Do that. That's what I tell theatre students, that don't wait for the greatest opportunity, don't wait for the ideal producer, don't wait for tons of finance, don't
Mhm.
expect to do a masterpiece of a play. Just if you have this desire to do theatre, just go ahead and do it. Just stand up in the garden outside your house and get 5 people to listen to you. That's theatre.
Very true.
So
Because
that's
you always speak of theater being a one performer, one audience kind of a thing.
absolutely a one-on-one experience.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
medium of getting across.
Yeah.
And it's not only the actor who contributes to it, it's the listener as well.
True. True. There should be an exchange of energy. Extremely
Absolutely.
true.
Yeah.
So, do you think there should be a time where actors should also push themselves into learning other aspects like writing and direction? Because why should it be always that the actor should be at the mercy of asking for roles? Why can't an actor create it for themselves?
For themselves. Well, you'll often find that when actors create roles for themselves, it's an exercise in vanity, mostly, you know.
Okay.
Though there are several instances of actors who have written and directed their own films.
Yes.
I can't think of too many actors on the stage who have written and directed their own plays apart from Mr. Utpal Dutt. I don't think there are any. actors who actually wrote. But that Sab Utpalda was a great mind. He was a very committed person, and his theatre was also political in nature. So I guess you need to have that kind of drive. There are young actors around who also write
True.
and who also produce and who also try and make small movies. In fact, I just saw this utterly wonderful movie called Ani Mani, which I've
Okay.
never even heard of, which no one has heard of, and it's been made 2 years ago by this bunch of youngsters. And it's a feature film of 2 hours, made in 10 lakhs, made by all unknown actors, all of whom,
Yeah.
if ever that film is seen, will have their day in the sun. But there's so much of that kind of stuff happening. So it's not as if every actor is a non-creative person. But the thing is, you see, you write roles for other people. An actor's output depends on so many factors apart from his own abilities. That is also true.
That's very true. That's very true. So I have gone through your book, and you seem to have a photographic memory. At the age of 2, you saw an artist performing on stage, and you wanted to be up there with him. And you also had a childhood dream where you saw yourself passing through a ventilator, sitting on a carpet, and when you woke up, you saw a ray of light through that same passage. Has that photographic memory helped you as an actor over the years, and how has it helped you?
I think it has helped me because with any person who aspires to be creative, it's impossible for that person to define where the influences come from. I think it's so with painters, it is so with poets, and it is certainly true with actors. You learn acting by osmosis. This is something that I've realized over the years. Like a plant, you know, gains its food from sunlight. It doesn't do anything. It just is in the sunlight. It's exposed to the sunlight, and so it grows. It's the same thing. I have always been utterly fascinated by three things right from childhood: the movies, theatre, and cricket.
Yes.
And I think it was around the same time that I must have seen my first movie and seen my first play, which was a school play. But they were both equally magical for me. I also knew that they were quite different from each other, even at that age. And the people on that screen didn't look like real people. I thought they were photographic tricks.
Yeah.
But then when I saw actors on the stage, I realized, hey, no, this is, people do this job.
Yes.
And for some reason, I really cannot, I do not know why. The most interesting thing in life for me to observe in day-to-day interaction is the way people relate to each other. And that is what I always used to watch in class. The teacher would be trying his best to explain natural vegetation or the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. And I would be watching the way he moved his hands, or the way he stood, or the way he spoke, or the way he shouted, and so on. And I'd be absorbing all that. I never absorbed any of the lessons. So I did very badly in school. My father was extremely concerned. I failed in class 9, and then I was shifted to another school where I didn't have such an issue of lack of confidence, and that is where I discovered myself by performing on the stage. The greatest influence on me, as I've written in my book repeatedly, is Mr. Kendall, Jeffrey Kendall. There must have been hundreds of us who watched his performances, because the group came every year to our school. Luckily, they also came to the other school in Ajmer, where I completed my education from class 9. And I was mesmerized by what I used to see them do, orally as well as visually. I consider Kendall Sahab the greatest actor I've ever seen. Yet there were others in that school who said, we had to sit through those Shakespeare plays, So once I was talking to my son when they were at the Doon school, and I said, we want to come to your school and do a play. So they said, look, Baba, please don't, because that's not the kind of play anybody will understand. It's too high-flown Urdu, and it is too risk. So but I didn't listen to his advice, and I went, and because what I argued back was that, look, I told him the Kendall Saab story on how it affected me and how it didn't seem to have affected anybody else. I'm the only actor who's come out of that school. That even if what I'm doing gets through to one kid, that's good enough for me. You can't expect the entire audience to be with you every second. There's another lesson I've learned over the years. An audience does not pay the kind of attention that you wish they would pay. They miss a lot of stuff in the play, but if there's even one person with whom you really strike contact, then it's been worth it.
Since you mentioned about method acting and being real in certain kind of cinema, how does an actor reinvent himself or herself while playing himself by putting her own reactions and not become monotonous?
You don't always use your own reactions. You try to discover the potential of being that person within yourself. Whether it's a herder of pigs, landless laborer in Bihar, or whether he's a corrupt subedar in pre-independence Gujarat, or whether he's a freedom fighter in 1857, or whether he's a shy, inhibited landlord who develops a desire for another man's wife. You have to find the potential of being that person within yourself. Okay. You don't have to become that kind of person now. Definitely not. I mean, it's the old argument, all this method acting, you have to play a murderer, you won't murder, all that stuff. Yeah. Naturally, you don't become a drug addict in order to play one. So you recognize that potential within yourself. And I could recognize the potential in myself of being that blasted subedar who whips a little boy for a small mistake, who will think nothing of kidnapping a woman for his own pleasure. And at the same time, I had to find the potential within myself of being this poor Bihari villager who's come to Calcutta in search of work. And you have to try and recognize that potential and uncover it. I'm making it sound a little bit simplistic, but that's really what I try to do. It's not as if I use my own reactions. I've never been in a situation where I've been hungry for 2 days and forced to swim across the river with pigs. I've never been in a situation like that. But same as if I play a murderer, I've never killed a person, and I hope I never will. But there are situations in one's life which one can draw upon.
Which are along the similar lines.
I could recall days at FTII when I was a student, and my dad had refused to have anything to do with me, and my brothers were helping me out financially. And there were days when I was very short. I remember not eating at times for 2 or 3 days, not eating a thing, just surviving on water and bumming cigarettes off people and begging for cups of tea. So using that as a base, one enlarges on that experience, and then you go into an imaginary territory where you try to empathize with that person.
Since you had also mentioned about your school days and you didn't like the subjects being taught, I would like to talk about it in detail. You have mentioned that English was very strong, but you didn't like the other subjects. You had flunked your 9th standard twice, but you ended up becoming the country's most educated and trained actor. You studied acting for 5 years, and today we look at you as a wise person who has not just perspectives about acting, but everything else. So why is the education system designed in a way that it made you go through that phase? Even you talk about NSD's process that they get actors from different parts of the country and make them learn Hindi diction, whereas they should be training them in their native languages.
In their own languages, yeah, exactly.
What is wrong with the education system, and how can we have a better future for the youth?
Firstly, we've been following blindly too many things that the British left behind. We're demolishing their statues, and we think that's enough. We're not demolishing their legacy. The schools they set up are still considered the best ones, the most elite ones, the most expensive ones. And I joined the school in 1955, 8 years after independence, after 47. And I can recall even at that time being told things like, don't think just because you're independent, you can do what you like, you kids. The Indian teachers who were there, which were not very many at that time, also adhered to the Irish sense of setting students right. That was the attitude, setting students right, and the judgmentalism. I don't think they spent any time in trying to assess the children. And that has been one of my complaints. You see, if you were bookish and if you could vomit out what you had crammed, you were considered a good student. This has unfortunately stayed
even now
in the norm. A creative student who gives an interesting answer to a typical question will probably gain very poor marks even today. And there was no, I don't really know if one can put the entire blame on the teachers. You see, I also think that different children have different mindsets, and some children are muddled from the start. You cannot discover the reasons for each and every case. It's too complicated to try and figure that out, to figure out why. But I do believe that every child has an aptitude for something. I don't believe that you're born with talent. Nature would not discriminate by giving one person heaps of talent and the other person none at all.
There is an inclination.
There is an inclination towards certain things. Kids have an inclination toward drawing or toward painting or toward doing somersaults or singing or swimming or running or whatever. If you're lucky enough to find and work on that inclination, and if somebody would help you find it, that was never the case, either with parents in those days or with the educational system. With parents today, I think are a little more open, because a lot of the kind of professions which were not respectable, like acting, for example, have suddenly acquired respectability. Not suddenly, over the years, have acquired respectability. But the emphasis on bookish learning rather than absorbing the world. I don't dismiss the value of bookish learning. I still find the fact that we were forced to learn these tables and so on proving helpful to me now. I can calculate things mentally and so on, which I hated doing then. I wish someone had explained to me the magic of numbers. I suffered through mathematics, through geometry and algebra and stuff. I love these subjects now. And I am in fact very good at them. But no one helped me find these abilities. There were 500 students in the school, maximum. Now there are thousands in every school. So I think those teachers owed it to us to pay more individual attention. Though, having been a teacher myself, I can say that it's the most thankless job in the world, because you never see immediate results. You never see immediate results. Any learning pays off decades later. And so a lot of teachers tend to get very frustrated and wonder if what they're doing is worthwhile. And thus they lose interest and they lose the passion, for what drove them to be teachers. There's very few people I know who became teachers out of choice. They've become teachers because they couldn't do other things. That's the tragedy. I wish there were more teachers who had opted to be teachers. I know 3 or 4, but not many. So I really think, and then objectivity toward our educational system has always been lacking. I mean, there's this new educational policy which is going to come into force, which I don't know what kind of changes it is going to bring.
Let's get back to those days at NSD. When you had decided that you would go to FTI after NSD, you and your friend Jaspal had gone to Ibrahim Al-Qazi and told him that we want to go there. And then Al-Qazi Saab had...
he flew into a rage. Traitors.
Traitors.
Till today, I don't understand. Till today, I don't understand what made him react like that. he had made it clear that we were not welcome in the school any longer. You know, disciplinary problems, and we'd had a falling out with him and several disagreements I'd had with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My admiration for him stays as it was, though. I disagreed with him on several things. And he just said, you people are betraying the theatre. And so I said, sir, you tell me what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to look for a place to stay and food to eat and money to travel with when I'm not assured of earning more than 15 rupees a month.
Mm-hmm.
For this. No, you have to sacrifice for the theatre, said he. I really don't know if he was ever aware that I'm one of the few students of his in Bombay who's actually doing theatre.
Yes, yes.
I think Al-Qazi Saab also wanted to be an actor.
Okay.
Though he never admitted it. But he did play the central part in several productions he did in Bombay before he came to Delhi. Then his nature was designing. He was a very good designer. And I don't know why he couldn't. He just foresaw these kids heading towards fame and fortune. I'm doing a bit of pop psychology here.
Were you always, yeah.
Whatever it was, but he never professed great pride in what I was doing or anything of the sort. No, never.
But were you always sure, like when you were at FTII, that you would still continue doing theatre, and you ended up opening Motley in 1979? So was it always a plan?
I know that I always wanted to. It wasn't a conscious plan. I knew that I loved acting on the stage, and I knew that I liked acting on the stage, and I would probably not quit it. But I had no tangible plan. I just thought I'd look for work. I knew that there were a lot of plays, English plays, and Marathi plays being done in Bombay, not so many Hindi. But I thought I'd certainly be accommodated in an English play or two. So that's what I thought I would do when I landed in Bombay after I finished with FTI. And I'd already done Nishant, so I had a bit of money in my pocket. I got a place to stay. And the very first day in Bombay, I set out to meet Satyadev Dubey. It was to ask him, if you're doing a play, can I be in it? Can I be backstage? Can I do anything? And I bumped into him, and then I met Ratna through him, and the rest is history. So the plan to start Motley was Benjamin Gilani's, actually. When we were shooting Junoon, he suggested it. I hadn't thought of it before. And I readily agreed. It just seemed to be something which I felt I should have thought of that, But Ben suggested it. And we have just gone on doing theatre without any real agenda, apart from trying to do worthwhile stuff. Staging what we feel will make a stimulating theatre evening. We're not political in nature in our plays. Only recently, a thing like the Krishan Chandra plays was slightly political in nature. And I guess every kind of work, every art is political to an extent.
Yes.
But we don't have an agenda. And, we can't claim to Utpal Das kind of theatre, which was really very, very Brechtian and it was pamphleteering, really. Because he felt very strongly about it. Or Habib Tanveer's kind of theatre. We did it because we just loved being on stage. Over the years, I've realized that being on stage is all very well and no one can take away that pleasure. But why do piffle? You're doing enough in movies. And so we resolved, never, after once attempting a commercial play called The Odd Couple, which flopped on its face, we thought we'd only do theatre which we believed in without trying to make money, because I decided I'd leave that to movies.
Okay.
As it happened, Motley is pretty much in the red, financially. Motley has become a self-sustaining company over the years.
Yeah. Again, we would go back to your days at NSD and FTII. There is a little related training that an actor takes, like learns dance or martial arts or singing. So you have said that you have never prepared yourself for the requirements of commercial cinema. But do you think that learning such skills can help an actor for acting itself rather than the other demands of the
Absolutely.
industry?
Absolutely. And I suggest it, and I push all my students to develop these skills. But I know what they're going through. I myself was convinced that I could never be able to sing when I was at the NSD. Al-Qazi cast me in a play where I had two solo numbers. In the Caucasian Chalk Circle, I was playing this role of the judge, and I have two songs I had to sing by myself. I talked my way through them because I was very influenced by Rex Harrison in My Fair Lady, much to Al-Qazi's displeasure. And that was one of the things that really he felt let down by. Because he said, I'm trying to help you develop your abilities. And I said, but sir, I'm never going to have to sing in my life. He said, how do you know?
Very true. That's
Yeah.
very true.
And he also said, you don't realize how much singing will help your speaking voice. I was young and brash and stupid. I didn't bother to listen to him. It was years and years, decades later, that I realized the value of training oneself in singing. When I was 50, that's exactly 20 years ago, I decided to learn how to stay in key, and I still can't sing with confidence. And I know I'll never be a singer, but at least, and I know how much benefit my speaking voice has gained from it. And I also know that it's another ability, the ability to dance. I curse myself for not having, trained in dance or practiced harder in movies where I had to dance. I could have done it if I'd worked harder. The singing I wouldn't have been able to manage, but the dance, what I could never manage was the narcissistic kind of performances required by Hindi cinema.
Playing
Where
to the gallery.
no, you're not playing. You're playing to the galleries, but when you're looking at your beloved, you're looking at yourself. You're not looking at her at all.
A wonderful way of putting it. But do you think that Hindi cinema would do away with song and dance now, given there are many films which come out which do the numbers also and they don't break the narratives into a song or
I
something?
hope there will be more people who will be able to use the song as a narrative. Anurag tries it.
Yes, yes, true.
Hirani tries it.
Yeah.
Bansali also tries it. So these are, in fact, probably the three. Devakar Banerjee does it as well. These are the four most interesting filmmakers around at the moment, I think. And surely they'll find a way, like the Western cinema found a way to incorporate it into the narrative, so that it doesn't remain only an item.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the tendency, whether it's a song or whether it's a fight. The choreographers of a fight will treat that fight as an item, not as a scene. And I've gone great telling these guys, look, this fight is a dramatic scene. Ek punch aapka wala nonsense. Don't do that. The fight is a dramatic scene. Treat it as that. You never do. And that's why you see the difference between our action scenes and the action scenes of Hollywood. I'm not a great fan of Hollywood, but they do a lot of things with a great deal of excellence. And you'll notice that in Hollywood, it's the stuntmen who make the heroes look good, Here, I've hardly seen a convincing stuntman or a stuntman who passed off as the hero even. So, incorporating it into the...
Maybe the songs are used more for marketing strategies for the film, because songs reach more than the movies in India, up to some extent, sometimes.
Yeah, and music, see, there are other kinds of music now which are heard widely in India. There's the qawwali, there's the ghazal, there's the bhajans, there's the alternative rock, there's the disco dance, or whatever they call it, what the kids make, kind of music my son makes. But there was a time when film music was the only popular form of music in India. We had no alternative form. There was the classical music whom nobody listened to, and there was the film music. Yeah. And everybody listened to the film music, no matter how disapprovingly they may have. But they all listened to it. So I don't think Hindi films will ever lose this essential ingredient because the audience needs it, and it's not a bad idea in a tiresome 2.5 hour movie to have a pleasant song or two, even if for no reason.
I wish to talk about some of your movies. I want to talk about this movie Sparsh 1980, for which you got a national award, and you taught the world how to play a blind man. And Shabana Azmi had recalled about it, saying that she had subconsciously given you a hand off camera when you were walking downstairs because you were so convincing as the blind person.
That was really sweet of Shabana. She's always been encouraging. She's always been so positive. She was a star, and I was doing my first movie, but she never made me feel, what kind of a luminosity a class of actor she belonged to, and I was a nobody. Several other movies I did. When she was doing, on the other hand, she was doing films like Akbar Anthony and this and that, and I was doing the Ketan Mehta's kind of movie. She still very graciously did supporting parts in films like Albert Pinto, where she had practically nothing to do, and several others, and has always been she's been a lodestar in many ways, who's always had faith in me, and I'm really grateful for that. Whether subconsciously or not, she put out her hand. That made me feel very good. And another thing she said during the shooting, "Hi, how sad, poor Naseer won't be able to see this film."
That's funny.
Yeah. So she's really sweet. I love her greatly, and I appreciate deeply her presence in all the work I've done. I couldn't have done it without her.
Was there a certain thought process that you had put into yourself while doing that character, and then everything happened organically? How did you approach it?
It was one bingo moment, I had some dealing with sightless people earlier. I had a couple of students in my class in Aligarh who were sightless. I had a grand aunt who was a great storyteller and who was as blind as a bat. And I used to watch the way they move around, the way they operate. The fact that they seldom bump into things, they seldom trip over anything. They may bump their shins on something, but you never see a blind man bump into a wall or into a tree. And I understood the reason for it later. So the first thing Sai told me was, "You're not going to wear dark glasses." So I said, "Bless you, Sai." I agreed totally.
Okay.
And I said, "But," she said, "Just read the script. Just read it. I won't tell you anything." I went home and I read it, and I was totally bowled over. I could not stop. I read it twice in succession because I couldn't believe that this character has come to me, and this is such an original piece of writing. This blind man, there's never been a blind man in movies like this. So I give the credit to the writing, Shashi.
Okay.
I only had to personify the character. Had I done that inaccurately, the movie might not have worked. But luckily, my instincts were on the same track as Sai. I was seeing that person in the same way as her. So I did several things. I had a pair of contact lenses made, but I could still see through them. Mm-hmm. So I discarded them. I blindfolded myself and moved around in my bedroom. I tried to walk down the road blindfolded, but then that attracted too much attention and it was a bit risky. But I did a great deal of that. But then I realized, I know this. But then one day, while I was blindfolded and I was trying to find my cigarette packet or something in the room, the telephone rang. Those were the days of landlines.
Yeah.
And I realized I did this instead of this. A sighted person will turn his eyes toward the person he's directing or the object toward he's directing. Yeah. A sightless person will direct his ears. And that explains a lot of their somewhat ungainly bodily behavior. You'll often find them, in postures like this. They're not aware. They're completely lacking in self-consciousness. They don't know what they look like. That's another very interesting fact. They have no idea what they look like. And that gives a certain purity to their soul. That's the only way I can find. You never see a blind man straightening his hair,
Yeah.
or worrying about his shirt being in place or anything of the sort. There is a purity. They smile so readily. These are the three things that I noticed and decided to incorporate. Apart from observing, so observation and imagination go hand in hand. I had to put myself into the shoes of this person. I agreed with him completely. When the waiter gives the bill to the woman, what the hell are you talking about? I could understand his anger. Why are you giving the bill to the woman? You know what I mean? Can't you see I'm sitting here? And so on. Don't help me. Sit down. I can pour my own tea. You don't have to help me. You don't have to pity me.
True.
These are things I could really empathize with. So, see, it all begins with great writing. Whether you're talking Sparsh, whether you're talking Masoom, which is another performance I'm very proud of, whether you're talking Nishant, whether you're talking Mirza Ghalib, it all begins with the writing. If the writing were faulty, the greatest actor in the world can't do a thing. Here I was helped immensely by the writing here.
Since you mentioned about the writing, and you have also said that the talent of an actor lies in his/her choices.
Yeah.
So how do you approach it? Like, how does one approach it? Is it a way that that actor has to visualize himself or herself in that role? And if that is the way to approach it, that isn't the actor restricting himself or herself to certain characters closer to their personalities and not taking chances out of their comfort zones?
No, I don't think so. Unless you are a personality actor, where you transform every character into yourself. There's a difference between doing that and transforming yourself into every character. I think you should, as I said earlier, find that person within you rather than try to create a picture of the character and try to fit into that, which is something actors do, some great actors. Sir Laurence Olivier always said that I find the externals, I find the character's nose, first of all. This is what he said famously.
Okay.
Everything else follows from that. I don't know what it is that I find. I must find a connection with that person. Even if he's a despicable SOB, I must find a connection with him. Like the part I played in a film called Bombay Boys, which hardly anyone has seen, but it's a performance I'm very proud of. But I'm playing this absolutely sickeningly lecherous film producer who is also a smuggler. He's a smuggler who's a film producer on the side and wants to produce a film in order to lose money. No. I had to face the lecherous aspects of myself.
Yeah.
I do have them. Everybody has them. It'd be hypocritical to say I don't.
Yes.
I'm a very saint.
Very
I know what lechery is like. I also know what greed is like. I also know what selfishness is like. These are the things. And it was such a delicious character. He was so disgusting, that I felt I'd love to play this, someone who's seen Masoom would have a fit, like my mother, for example. And she'd say, "Hi, toba toba. Aise gande role mat kiya karo." But I think it's important, it's really important to be able to face these aspects of yourself. Some of them are painful to face. Some are fun. I have fun most of the time.
But when you say that an actor can never become the character, do you also mean that a trait an actor learns during the process of preparation of the character, that can also not stay with the actor forever?
Oh, sure it can.
It can? Okay.
It's quite different from becoming the character. For example, my attitude towards blind people changed completely after the experience of Sparsh.
How wonderful.
Yeah. I have nothing but admiration for them. And as I were to go back a little bit, hard as I tried in Sparsh, I don't think I was ever able to really imagine what it would be like to live a life in darkness. I don't think I was able to really imagine that. It's not possible. Um, and similarly, this whole business of becoming the character, you cannot and you should not. What if a character playing Othello became Othello? You know, what would you do with that guy?
True, true. Here, I would like to move on to one more movie of yours, Jaane Bhi Do. So that movie has become a cult over the years, and it's a very funny film which raises very pertinent questions about our political structure and capitalism, everything, judiciary.
Yeah.
But if you look at the performance side of the film, many characters are animated and are played in a way that they are not real life people. That's not how real life people behave.
Yeah.
So I have two questions. How did you crack that character, which is sometimes animated and sometimes in the real space? And was it not possible to make an out and out funny comedy film by keeping everyone in the real space and not doing over the top physical comedy and all?
I think no, because it's by its end, it's no longer funny, the film.
Yeah,
You know?
true, that's true, very true.
So we could not have had a comic conclusion. That was foregone. Because Kundan was making a film about two losers, two honest losers. That he was very clear about. So I think the tone that it caught was a strange mix of the movies that had affected Kundan deeply, or the kind of performance that had affected Kundan deeply, and that was something like the Marx Brothers, and the intensely felt inward performances of actors like Belmondo and Brando as well. No theatricality, didn't enter into that at all. But I hadn't seen enough of the Marx Brothers at that time. I'd seen Chaplin, of course, and Brando. I was more influenced by Brando. And I was into this method acting thing at that time where I believed that you got to be true. You know, even in order to be funny, you have to be true. The situation cannot be a bogus one in order to make it funny. And so Kundan and I had the most violent argument over that telephone scene, which I realized is a tribute to a scene from a Marx Brothers movie, A Day at the Races, where these two characters are in the same room talking on the telephone to each other. It's not a copy of it, it's a nod, it's a tilt of the hat to it. And I told Kundan, what is this bloody nonsense? How can this be? This is going to be idiotic. And poor Kundan was a very mild person. I lit into him, but he calmed me down and he said, look, Naseer, please just do it. Just do it. I know it will be all right. All right, I know you don't like it. Maybe it is rubbish, but just you please do it, yeah.
You even trip over a banana peel at the park.
Yeah.
How did you convincingly do all that?
Those are tricks. But there were several points in the film where Kundan and I disagreed, and I said, look, this is impossible to execute. You've written a bloody script in animation. It should be made in animation, not with live actors, you know. Yeah, because you've given us things to do which we cannot possibly execute.
Yeah.
On the roller skates and so on, for example, how we managed it all. And then, but I have to say that in the scenes where I was required to be real, in the scene of the betrayal with the editor at the end, for example, or the romantic scene in the mirror with her, I felt much more comfortable in those kind of scenes than in the comic bits. Also because what helped me greatly was the presence of incredible comic actors like Satish Shah and Ravi Baswani, their presence on the sets. Om, who no one thought would be funny, but he's one of the funniest things in the film.
Yeah.
And it just, you know, and there was a lot of fellow feeling during that film. We would have died for each other, you know. We kept quarreling with each other and tearing each other's throats out, but we would have given our lives for each other as well. Despite everything, there were no bloody air-conditioned trailers for actors. There was nothing. Hardly any of us had a car. Satish Shah was the only one who had a car. We used to all sit in his car and put on the air conditioner, you know, in between shots. Otherwise, we'd end up sitting on the road. We shot that scene at Haji Ali. At the Haji Ali Circle, the photo studio was.
Yeah.
And we used to bring food from home. I had just gotten married. Satish had a family, so Satish and I would bring a tiffin from home.
You even lost your camera, it seems.
And I lost my camera, which Kundan replaced.
Very unfortunate.
Yeah. So very many memorable. Though it's the last film that I expected would be remembered 40 years later. It's really something. Kundan tried very hard to write a sequel. He did produce a script which I read, which didn't work because the level of corruption now, and corruption is one of the themes of Jaane Bhi Do. The level of corruption now has reached another stratosphere, and no longer does a policeman taking away a 50 paisa coin matter to Kundan, or to any of us for that matter. Now the policeman will have to take away 50 lakhs from us for us to get agitated. So that script never worked out. He had got a producer and everything. Then Ravi died. So I just said, okay, I'm not doing this anymore because there's nobody who can replace Ravi. Absolutely nobody can replace him. Ironically, the next person they got in touch with was Irfan to play Ravi's role. And much as I loved Irfan, I felt he's not right for this part. We should not do this thing. Oh, but he said, no, but everybody else will be the same. I said, why will everybody else be the same? Bhakti Barve is dead. Nobody looks the same as they looked 40 years ago. And then Om died. And then that was the end of the story. So it's good, in fact, that he didn't make a sequel because it wouldn't have measured up. Jaane Bhi Do Yaro happened due to a hell of a lot of positive energy.
That's very nice. Naseer sir, there has been a debate all the time. This debate has existed that cinema is a very powerful medium and filmmakers should be responsible enough to make cinema which leaves you with a thought. And the other school of thought is that it's just a medium for entertainment. How do you look at this?
Well, it is certainly a medium of entertainment and no one is knocking that. I often see films only for entertainment. Some of my favorite films are things like The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, or Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. But at the same time, among my favorite films is also a thing like Pyasa, a thing like Apocalypse Now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a balanced dose is what is required. You cannot pass on an important thought to an audience unless you keep their attention engaged. That's what I believe. So even if you are stating something highly political, I think you are obliged to state it in a way which will win your audience over and which will hold their attention, or rather which will hold their attention and win them over. And I don't believe in pedantic kind of stuff, preachy, talking down to the audience kind of stuff. I don't believe in that at all. You've got to have respect for the audience's intelligence. Don't overstate things. But you also have got a responsibility to the audience to keep them engaged, if not entertained, engaged. A film like Mulk does not entertain you, but yet it keeps you thoroughly engaged. A film like Thappad, both these films, right? A film like Mirch Masala entertains you as well as gives you a food for thought. So you can't accuse David Dhawan of not having sociological statements in his films. He doesn't intend to. But you can't dismiss his cinema because he doesn't. He believes in that kind of cinema. He makes it. Right? Manickal believed in that kind of cinema, so he made it. Bhansali, etc. Each one who makes it.
Each his own.
Yeah. To each his own. What I believe the important function that the films can serve is to act as a record of their times, to be a truthful picture of their times, rather than to create this sugar candy, where everything turns out right in the end. That is why I think films like Mulk and Thappad and the film I talked about, Ani Mani, or even a film like Konkona's Death in the Ganj, I think they are very important films.
Naseer sir, we have reached to the end of this conversation. I have just one last fun question for you. Over the years, many comedians have been impersonating your acting style to create
Yeah,
comedians.
yeah, I've never heard any. No comedian, including Johnny Lever, who's a dear friend of mine, and Javed Jaffri, both of whom I like very much. They'll never do an imitation of me when I'm around. But I guess it's the ultimate compliment.
Have you seen any of them? And how do you? The youth loves all that, and it's very popular on social media and everywhere.
Really? So they must be copying the kind of dialogue which I've done. Yeah.
No, it's done in a really sweet way.
Yeah.
You should be checking that out.
Okay, I'll check it out.
With that, thank you so much, sir. It was a lovely conversation. Not just a conversation, it was a masterclass.
Thank
you so
very
much.
much. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Stay safe.
Hey guys, if you like that video, do share it with your friends and family. Do not forget to subscribe to the Red Sparrow for educative and entertaining content, and make sure you press the bell icon.